Now it's time for the second half of the 2010s, where we go from 2015 to 2019. I would say this half of the decade is where I started to get watching a lot of these movies. So we're going to start this up, of course, in 2015, and we got, I think I see 11 on this one. So we begin this up with Carol, probably the closest film for Todd Haynes to receive a Best Picture nomination in an expansion, but it only received just in the top 8 actress for Kate Blanchett, supporting actress for Rooney Mara in her lead performance, and adapted screenplay. I am giving this one an A on this one. I really didn't actually was surprised I liked this movie, even though this is a Weinstein film. Um, I don't know what it made me really took to this movie. I think it was because not just of the writing from Phyllis Nage, but with how the setting of this, with specifically the setting of this movie and this unique lesbian style story that really went creative how the relationship between Blanchett and Mara's character really had been. Especially we go through more of the journey of Mara's character, which is why she's more the true main character. Even though Carol, opposite our titular character played by Kate Blanchett, is also the lead, but the story really is a lot about Mara, and she really gave a fantastic performance, but it should have been a nomination for leading, not supporting. The Globes and the Indie Spirits did the right way and nominated her in leading, although the BAFTAs did put her in supporting. Yeah, it's just obviously the relationship these two had, like not in a secret romance way, while Carol's kind of going through a divorce with her husband for other than some sort of secret thing, other than revealing obviously the relationship she would have with this girl, but that's not really brought up much in the movie. Um, yeah, I think it's just Blanchett's performance that kind of prevents it from going into S tier. The way how Edward Lockman shoots the camera, it just really is fantastic. Well done cinematography. And this film actually gave Carter Burwell his first nomination in original score, but I don't really remember this much. Is this technically a Christmas movie? Because I know in the beginning portion it does center around Christmas, and I think it even goes into the New Year as well. So, kind of counts, I guess. All right, it is time for one of the big ones. And we got Creed, the spin off film of the Rocky franchise, directed by Ryan Coogler, starring Michael B. Jordan, and earned Sylvester Stallone a Best Supporting Actor nomination. Now, I will get this first thing right of the way. I have not seen the Rocky movies, not even the Best Picture winner of 1976. So, yeah, I've not even seen the original Rocky still to this date because you don't even. This felt like kind of like for me with Mad Max Fury Road and Star Wars The Force Awakens, where you didn't have to watch all the previous films to understand Creed specifically because it kind of introduces you to the world of Rocky. And I am putting this one in A as well. The whole journey of obviously Creed trying to go into his father's legacy, even though his mother kind of disapproved of it, but his entire journey from obviously starting up kind of small and then obviously getting Rocky Balboa as his coach throughout the entirety of the match. But obviously, when he got a cancer diagnosis, that kind of puts in a little bit of a situation, and I really felt bad for Rocky throughout his time during the production of this movie, and obviously leading to a big, massive climax, of course, of the big, massive boxing match. Like I said, a lot of boxing movies really do well here for me. Stallone, yes, I would say he definitely did deserve that nomination, but like I said in my best picture tier list, I still would have given my vote to Mark Rylance, but Stallone definitely would have been a close second. Ryan Coogler really did a great job directing this film after he made his debut feature with Fruitvale Station, which I have not seen, even though I almost feel like I have to. I know I'm going to have to watch Sinners for obviously this upcoming year's marathon when it receives a lot of Oscar nominations. So, and obviously, it's very interesting how Michael B. Jordan and Ryan Coogler have this massive collaboration with each other. Like, first Fruitvale Station, then this, and obviously the Black Panther movies, um, and then of course Sinner. So man, these two are a unique duo to one another. But yeah, Michael B. Jordan really should have gotten a Best Actor nomination. Tessa Thompson really underrated in this film. Even though it's like she's the love interest, but is a love interest that's somewhat deaf. That's pretty unique. So I think she should have got a Best Supporting Actress nomination, especially since this was the year of the hashtag Oscar So White controversy. I think this movie should have got a lot more recognition, like the acting categories, other than Stallone's performance, and Best Picture, definitely. Next up is The Danish Girl, which is Tom Hooper's follow up to Les Miserables, and before he went his career downfall with Cats. This earned a post-win nomination for Eddie Redmayne for Best Actor and a supporting actress win for Alicia Vikander in her lead performance. And obviously, this is another movie that might have not aged well. You probably would have gotten a trans woman to do the role, as this is about the first person to go under gender confirmation surgery. Um, I am, despite of Redmayne's performance in this, I'm actually going to give this a B because I really do actually like the story of this, and Vikander's performance is so fantastic in this. Um, but yeah, I would have nominated her in leading. The Globes and the BAFTAs did, so they did put her on the right category for there, because they nominated for supporting for the next movie that we're actually going to be talking about. But yeah, I think the story just really kind of works well with the screenplay, how it's told, of how obviously where we've seen our main character going through this massive transformation of where he wants to be to a now a she, and obviously I believe was Redmayne's character as a male before he transformed into I think Lily, I believe, and then obviously this artist who is supposedly his wife is very upset obviously with the whole transformation and now kind of dealing with the situation of where she wants to be now compared to where she used to be with when she was a she. That's Redmayne's character. Yeah, it's just I think it would have worked a lot better if you did had a better casting person than Eddie Redmayne. Like from Stephen Hawking to I might even go back to the Theory of Everything for his performance than this one. Easily, I think his best performance I've seen from him. I've not seen Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them or The Good Nurse, but definitely just in terms of Oscar nominated ones, it's like even though Fantastic Beast it was, but just in terms of like top 8 movie material, that is easily my week with Marilyn. So yeah, I think that was his best performance, but Vikander really is fantastic as well as the script here, as well as the unique costume and production designing. Pretty good job. Even though, like Transamerica and a couple of other films, this one has not aged well because of casting decisions. You can even say Dallas Buyers Club because if this movie was made now, you have to get a trans woman. Next up is Ex Machina. Obviously, this is Alicia Vikander's other movie she was in this year as the big major supporting player with Domhnall Gleeson, who was also in. I know he was in Star Wars: The Force. Was it Star Wars: The Force Awakens? And he was in another film, obviously. And this is Alex Garland's directorial debut, where it earned an original screenplay nomination and pulled off one of the biggest Oscar upsets of the 2010s, winning for Best Visual Effects over 3 Best Picture nominees with Mad Max Fury Road, The Martian, and The Revenant, and the highest grossing film of the year, Star Wars The Force Awakens. Like, not also one of the biggest upsets in the probably the biggest upset in the technical categories of the 2010s, but also probably one of the most inspired Oscar winners in this category. Easily, I am going to put Ex Machina in an A as well. Wow, this film is just fantastic, to be precise, of how obviously Gleason's character gets to meet a person he really is a fan of, which is Oscar Isaac's character, and obviously meets the potential first humanoid robot, which I believe is Ava or Axa, I forget what, who is Vikander's character, and kind of almost has a bit of a unique relationship of finding the dark side of Oscar Isaac's character of what he's actually trying to do. And it all leads up to these phenomenal performances from both Vikander and Oscar Isaac. Oscar Isaac definitely should have gotten a Best Supporting Actor nomination for his performance. Like, he had another great 2015 with that and Star Wars The Force Awakens. But yeah, Ex Machina, wow, his character goes into a massive turning event as well as Vikander's character. The only thing that I prevented it from going to S is the ending. I really did not like what Vikander's character does at the end, so that's the one thing that kind of prevents him from going into S tier. But the rest of it, including the script, Alex Garland's direction, it's still definitely a fantastic movie. I would still go back to, even though I would probably just skip the ending. Now into 45 years from Andrew Hay, who would later direct All of Us Strangers that got Charlotte Rampling a Best Actress nomination, also co-starring with Tom Courtenay. I saw this movie obviously when I was going to start watching films in the Criterion Collection. I'm gonna give this one, yeah, I'm gonna give this an E, but it would be an E plus, close to a D minus, but it would be an E plus. I kind of don't remember about the decades old secret of what the revealment would be when it comes to obviously Rampoint's character finding out about her husband's secret, almost like when potentially when she dies or even before he married her. It was very unfortunate what it was, but I don't really remember much of the movie other than the Oscar-nominated clip and the party scene where Tom Courtenay cries at the end of his speech, and that's basically kind of it. I don't really remember much about this movie, although I really do liked all of the Strangers that I saw like over a year ago. Definitely a fantastic movie. I even have that in the Criterion collection. But when it comes to 45 years, it's kind of very forgetful. Time for Quentin Tarantino's The Hateful Eight. And even also technically the last Harvey Weinstein movie to ever win an Academy Award, as this won for original score. Its highest nomination was for supporting actress for Jennifer Jason Leigh, getting her first nomination of her career. But oddly, Tarantino did not get an original screenplay nomination, oddly enough. I am definitely also putting this one in A. This was actually also my first Tarantino movie because I was starting to watch a lot of these movies during 2016 and stuff like that when it comes to the 2015 nominated movies, and this was a fantastic film when I first saw this. Uh, the build up, obviously, when we enter into the cottage and we see all of our eight characters, and then we try to figure out what is going on. And then when we get to nearing the climax, when we get to the backstory before the final chapter, it then comes into fruition. It's like one goes out of the eight, and the entire cast is particularly fantastic. Not just with Samuel L. Jackson as our lead, but also Jennifer Jason Leigh, who definitely would have been my pick for Best Supporting Actress because even though Mara and Vikander are great, but since they were in the wrong categories, I would have to go with who is the legit supporting the most, and that's Jennifer Jason Leigh, so she would be my top pick. And also, Walton Goggins, wow, he got overlooked this entire season for this film. He was fantastic as the rookie sheriff, and all of his scenes of where he goes back and forth between with each of the characters, whether it be obviously our female character with Jennifer Jason Leigh or the other characters, and obviously with his connection with Samuel L. Jackson's character. And I believe this is supposed to be a post. I think if I'm remembering correct, this is a post-slavery movie. So this is like post-World War II, Civil War movie specifically, which is why there's kind of a bit of a racist thing kind of going on in the beginning. But there's not much going on, of course. And then when we get to the big revealment, they have a unique friendship of how they really get into this final investigation of what is the purpose with what is going on in that house. But oh man, I heard there was an extended like miniseries cut of the film. I've not seen it, but I would be very interested in watching this and like watching the extended scene that does it like in a miniseries way. I think that was on Netflix, but I don't know where I would find it now. So if I ever get a chance, I might even watch the entire film, but in that miniseries format down the road in the future. And now we're coming into our latest animated film to date that received a nomination in the top 8 categories with Pixar's Inside Out, our winner for animated feature that year, which earned an original screenplay nomination. I am giving this one a B. Now, I have talked about this a bit in my Oscars, when I used to do the series, when I usually reviewed all the animated feature, documentary feature, and international feature nominees. After when I decided to cancel it, I decided just to do ranking all the nominees each of those years. Inside Out was my number two. Now I do remember also getting experience watching this in when it was out in theaters. And rewatching it, I do find it's good, but I wouldn't consider it one of my all-time favorite Pixar films, and probably not my favorite Pete Docter film. I might go back to Obviously, I go back to Monsters Incorporated. I forgot where I put Up in this tier list. I don't have that. Well, probably when I do the animated feature tier list, I will remember where I would put it. But yeah, I think I might even go back to Soul more so than Inside Out, honestly. But yeah, the story, very fantastic script. Definitely, even though it would not have been my pick for animated feature, that was Shaun the Sheep movie, but I would still definitely would have nominated for original screenplay because the script was fantastic with Pete Docter, Meg LaFoe, and story credits from Josh Cooley, Ronnie Del Carmen, and Josh Cooley, and then the story credit from Ronnie Del Carmen, excuse me, of how they ended up taking that in of a unique story of having emotions controlling the minds of all the people, including obviously through the perspective of Riley, where she obviously is relocating to San Francisco and how she's not used to it, of course, and like if you take the emotion out, like obviously the personalities of joy and sadness, and you like okay, if you basically take the emotions out, and if it's like a live action film or like a movie just like that, if they don't have these emotional characters, it would be a very dramatic movie from Pixar standards, and it definitely would have gotten very very heavy. And I am very glad of where the movie kind of goes. But although it's not one of my all-time picks for the Pixar films here of the 2010s, but I still do enjoy it. And then we are into Joy, the last time the Oscars would recognize a bit of David O. Russell, which earned Jennifer Lawrence a Best Actress nomination. Yeah, this is very forgettable. I'm gonna put this one in E. All I just remembered is about obviously, I think Joy's the actual real life person that Jennifer Lawrence portrays, but I kind of forget. But yeah, it's just her just dealing with the life of the bad relationship with her husband, played by Bradley Cooper, and then obviously where she goes. I think the only scene I remember is her just like doing like I think was a scene with the when she's using a shotgun and doing like shooting those cans that are on the fences, and the guy who owns it kind of is very impressed with what she was doing. That's the only scene I do remember from Joy. The rest of it I really don't remember. It almost feels like am I getting the almost the vibes that Joy would be kind of the same levels of the Pursuit of Happiness, but I think the Pursuit of Happiness does a little bit better job. That would be very interesting if both those movies would fight out in a match between the two, and I think I would go with the Pursuit of Happiness. Next up is Steve Jobs, Danny Boyle's biopic that was written by Aaron Sorkin and got two acting nominations for Michael Fassbender for Best Actor and Kate Winslet for Best Supporting Actress. I'm gonna give this one a D. I was very disappointed in this film. Um, I just really think that like the script is fine. What Sorkin did was fine, but I think it's the performances that just didn't work. Whether it be from Fassbender or Winslet, two British people playing in Americans, or Jeff Daniels as somewhat of this antagonist, and obviously going this chapter structure where we go from a young version of him to like somewhere in the 80s, and then uh, like somewhere in the late 90s or something like that, or 2000s, where the connection with his daughter with a massive secret. I really don't remember much of that. That's the only thing. I think it's like a three chapter structure, and that just didn't work for me. I think the script is just the decent thing about the movie. I really wish they would have gone a lot more into it, but I know there was the infamous 2012 movie from starring Ashton Kutcher that got a lot of bad representation. So I've not seen that film. So I don't know. Maybe I might like it more than Boyle's film, but it's just Sorkin's script is probably the only decent thing, and that didn't even get an adapted screenplay nomination. Next up is the NWA biopic Straight Outta Compton. A big summer hit too. Ended up getting an Oscar nomination for original screenplay. I am putting this one in A as well. This film is fantastic. Obviously, not also, obviously, yes, it's kind of more the origins of this famous rap group, and of course, the origins of people like Ice Cube and Dr. Dre and Easy E specifically, the main three we follow. With the fantastic casting choice of having Ice Cube's son, O'Shea Jackson Jr., playing his father. Like, it doesn't seem at first glance seems a bit lazy, but when you watch the movie, he gives a fantastic performance, and it's just a perfect casting choice because he really does look like a young version of his dad during the 80s. So that's just perfect casting in that. This also movie had gotten a little bit of recognition. Most notably, I know Jason Mitchell would be, who plays Eazy-E, would be playing in a big another major Oscar movie we'll get to in 2017. Paul Giamatti as her manager. Wow. It's just man that Love and Mercy, and I think was it Rock of Ages where he plays a very dick manager. Wow. But this obviously kind of goes into not just also the story of this group and also each of these three members of the troops of their different situations, especially with Easy E, but also with the situation going on during the racist cops in Los Angeles that would lead into the LA riots after the beating of Rodney King. Obviously, that would lead into songs like, of course, obviously their main song and F the Police. And, like, there's a lot of scenes, obviously, that really does make you angry what the racist cops were doing. And it just shows how bad racism was, even during the late 80s and early 90s. Especially just shows how bad racism was, especially how discrimination was. Even during the 90s, it's just like so unfortunate to see what it was back then, and it's still so like it feels like it's somewhat of a problem still to this day. Yeah, there's a lot of scenes I really do like. Obviously, like even the making of that of the F the Police song, and obviously the concert scene that just really gets you mad of what um the I think the chief of police did, just arresting them after they did the song when they told them not to. It's kind of like a censorship act. Although there are some inaccurate scenes, but that's how it is in almost every biopic movies. There's always some fictitious part. But yeah, all three of our stories, I think easily. I wish there was a lot more focus on Ice Cube, but it was primarily on Dr. Dre and Eazy-E the most. F. Gary Gray did a fantastic job directing this movie. It's well great edited. The sound mixing was fantastic. It really should have got a lot more recognition other than just a screenplay, which, by the way, this would be my pick for Best Original Screenplay over Spotlight. And finally, 2 years after he finished the successful show Breaking Bad, Bryan Cranston earned his first Oscar nomination for portraying the ever famous blacklisted screenwriter in Trumbo, which earned him a Best Actor nomination, of course. Helen Mirren got close for a supporting actress nomination. It did get a SAG Ensemble nomination, so it was probably also close to getting an adapted screenplay, but it only earned Cranston a nomination. I am giving this one a D. There is some scenes that are pretty unique, I would say. Obviously, where he is confronting, I think, when he was explaining about the Hollywood blacklist, where obviously, like, kind of like in confrontation, it's kind of like for an example, like addressing to like Congress or something like that, or even to the California Congress or something like that. It's kind of like with what Walt Disney would do a few years after the animation strike, because obviously communism was still kind of a big thing, and there was a potential Trumbo was a communist himself. And one thing was pretty unique is they actually did got to film in Dalton Trumbo's house and use a lot of his real stuff, including the Oscar he actually technically won, and even Bryan Cranston getting to be in his bathtub. And obviously his bathtub scene, which was his Oscar-nominated clip with Elle Fanning as his daughter, when Elle really wanted, well, I forgot what Dalton's daughter's name was, but when Elle Fanning's character actually wants her dad to come down while having birthday cake, and then Dalton just doesn't, and her father just doesn't really care because he's busy working and doesn't really care about a slice of birthday cake. That was a great Oscar clip, by the way, to choose for his performance. Helen Mirren, I don't remember much as I think it's Hedda Hopper, I believe that's what her name was. I don't really remember much of her performance, but yeah, I really wish they would have done a lot more. I don't know about the making of the movie or the communist aspect, but I think they went a little bit too much on his family life. But it's just been a while since I've seen this movie, but I felt like there were some good scenes, but it wasn't really a movie I would go back to. Time for 2016 here, and it looks like we got, I believe, 8 films here to talk about. And we will start this up with Captain Fantastic, which earned a Best Actor nomination for Viggo Mortensen. It also earned a Screen Actors Guild Ensemble nomination. I am putting this one in. I'm going to put this one in D, but it would be a D minus. It's basically, obviously, of course, about this father and this kids are trying to get the body of his recently deceased wife back to them because her parents wanted her to do a regular funeral instead of the funeral what she wants to do of being burned through a celebration party with from his husband and his kids. Um, and throughout that time, they go on a cross country road trip journey, specifically to get the body back of his wife slash the mother of their mother in terms of the kids' perspective. But they're kind of like outsiders, and they follow an interesting rule that they don't follow like things in the real world. For an example, when they stop at a restaurant, Mortensen's characters basically said, "We cannot eat any of these." It's almost basically like what his mother is stating. And then obviously they just leave and they can't have anything like a grilled cheese sandwich. They can't even have that. And then throughout the journey, I don't remember much of what they also do throughout their journey, other than when they arrive in California and not also they arrive at the funeral and specifically they even meet not also his mother and father-in-law, but also the kids meet Uh, they're somewhat grandparents for the first time, and they want to take the kids away from him because of how bad he is as a father, or it's just specifically how they do this like outdoor thing. It's not like a religious thing, but it's more like a culture thing. I think that's what it is. And obviously the fact, like I know the grandfather is played by Frank Langella. I do remember that, but obviously it's just like it really doesn't go into it a way. Obviously, I'm glad they kind of go into a normal life at the beginning, near the end of the movie, and doing the way like saying you have to go to school and stuff like that. That happens at the ending. But they knew that like their culture thing would have to end after with his wife slash for the kids their mother's passing. But it's just not a thing. I don't think Mortensen would have not been my casting choice for this film. Now we're into Elle, the French film from Paul Verhoeven, who many of you might know him as the director of RoboCop. This earned Isabelle Huppert a Best Actress nomination, but oddly missed the shortlist for Best International Feature and definitely should have gotten in. I'm putting this one in A. Now, yes, I know this is a movie about a woman getting raped, specifically, I think, ahead of a video game company, I would say, who has a bit of a sexual also fantasy about her new sexually young married neighbor, but we still do not even know if this who this secret almost like robber that raped her or stuff like that. Like it is immediately jump scared, like it's right at the beginning of the movie, and she's still trying to figure out who is raping her, and also like what's going on in the company, and just seeing like what's going on while she's also having these sexual fantasies at the same time. Isabelle Huppert is fantastic in this role. She definitely deserved that Oscar nomination for Best Actress. She was definitely my number two behind Emily Stone. I really wish this movie would have gotten a lot more recognition. If it would have been nominated for International Feature, I think this easily would have been my pick. Um, Adapted screenplay definitely would have been nice. It is obviously a very uncomfortable movie, and this obviously is a movie that occurs even after, before the Me Too movement, excuse me. It's it is kind of very odd to talk about that during the circumstances, but well, it's kind of like more of a thriller story. So isn't that what it is in almost a lot of movies? But I think this one really kind of did the best one interpretation, because I think it doesn't work well in like in an American movie, but when it comes to a non-English production, I think it might work well and just easily do a better investigation story and how our main female protagonist goes throughout the journey throughout this movie. And now we're into Florence Foster Jenkins, which only earned a Best Actress nomination for Meryl Streep, excuse me, and as well as a costume design nomination. And this is from Stephen Frears, the man behind, of course, obviously a couple of films we just talked about, like Mrs. Henderson Presents, and obviously also did The Queen and Philomena. Um, this I'm also going to put this one in A as well. I really like the story of this famous. Well, obviously, if you don't know who she is supposedly a famous opera singer, but obviously, she's notable for singing pretty badly. Like, it's almost like it's so bad it's good territory. And obviously, with her husband played by Hugh Grant, who technically is having an affair at the same time, but Hugh Grant really captivates the performance and what makes the movie really good, as well as the writing from the of the screenplay, as well as Simon Helberg, who yes, if for those who don't know, who plays Howard Wolowitz in The Big Bang Theory. During his running in the show, this was a big major movie that he did, and he even got a Golden Globe nomination for supporting actor, because the Globes did the right way of nominating Hugh Grant in leading. But the rest, not counting Critics' Choice, because actor in a comedy, I think it's kind of technically leads. But then again, you can't really tell the difference between leading and supporting there. But they don't do that like that anymore. But he did win supporting oddly at SAG and BAFTA, but miss out the Oscar nomination. And yeah, I think if he would have got a nominate, it definitely would have been for leading, not supporting, because he is fantastic in this film. Definitely a shame he did not get recognized. This movie should have got a lot more recognition, like maybe Best Picture, Original Screenplay, and production design especially. The costumes I'm glad it got in, but Streep, on the other hand, that could be the reason why it's preventing it from being an S. If they did got somebody else that would have done something like that, I don't know if it would have been great or not. Like, maybe it probably would have done better, like, in a play adaptation, but in a movie adaptation, maybe not, even though this is a very fantastic movie in general. Next up is Jackie, and this is the first film of Pablo Larraín's female biopic trilogy. The other one being another film that we'll talk about in the next part, and Maria. Jackie here earned 3 Oscar nominations for costume design, which almost won, original score, and Best Actress for Natalie Portman, who was considered the frontrunner at one point, and she even did one at the Critics' Choice Awards. But obviously it did change from Isabelle Huppert kind of going in second and Emily Stone in second as the winner. I am putting this one also in A. This is a fantastic story of doing the perspective of Jacqueline Kennedy's time period of specifically what happened after her husband got shot all the way up to her husband's funeral. And it doesn't kind of go into like just a straightforward narrative, because it kind of goes in a back and forth thing with not just also with that, but also a few years later of having an exclusive interview from a journalist played by Billy Crudup, who is fantastic, by the way, in this movie. Even though he's just the journalist, he really has great scenes in this film. And also a recreation of one of the the famous White House tour that Mrs. Kennedy did. Yeah, it's well directed. It's well written from Noah Oppenheim. Portman's performance could be the thing. Now, I know Jacqueline Kennedy is supposed to have this southern accent, of course, but I think I would not choose Portman as the role for this. It probably, like, she definitely looks like her, but I don't think she doesn't sound like Mrs. Kennedy, honestly. I think I would have gotten a Southern actress to do the role who has almost a close voice interpretation of Jacqueline Kennedy. Portman actually stated that she should have won for this and not for Black Swan, because I think she has regretted working with Darren Aronofsky, because some people do not like Darren Aronofsky in the industry. Especially as there were some controversies during the filming of the movie, especially the infamous lesbian sex scene in Black Swan. So she thinks she should have won, but I strongly disagree. Emily Stone definitely deserved that Best Actress win. Yeah, so it still definitely looks great in an aspect, well written, great performance from Billy Crudup. It's just Portman's performance kind of prevents it from going to S tier. Now we're into The Lobster from Yorgos Lanthimos, which earned an original screenplay nomination, starring Colin Farrell, Rachel Weisz, and even John C. Reilly and Olivia Colman in small roles. This is going in E territory for me. I really was not a fan of this movie. It didn't piss me off. That's why it's not going to F territory. It's just like, yeah, the concept seems interesting of having somebody as a single person that has to find a woman, specifically this interesting hotel facility, or even for the opposite sex gender. But if they're not, they can't really find anything, they would be transformed into an animal. And our main character, played by Colin Farrell, wants to transform into a lobster. I don't know how it would be done, but it's kind of interesting. So like Farrell would have this relationship with this woman, but then there's another woman played by Rachel Weisz, and they have this bigger connection, and there are some massive consequences in the headquarters that would lead them into escaping back to the real world. And then the ending shot, it's just odd. Like, this was obviously my first Yorgos Lanthimos movie, of course. It obviously works better when it's a movie that is not written by him, I would say. Even though I can't really say, well, I can say that about Dogtooth, but I don't know about his other films or even Kinds of Kindness. Just specifically movies that were written by him. And he, along with Itimas Filippo, were nominated for original screenplay. And there was nothing that other than some shots I do remember. The production side is pretty good. That could be a reason why it's preventing it from being an F. And I would say the cinematography. I just think I think the humor just didn't work for me. I think this was his first English film, if I'm not mistaken. Now we're into Loving, Jeff Nichols' racial biopic on Richard and Mildred Loving during the segregation time in the state of Virginia, which earned a Best Actress nomination for Ruth Negga, almost did for Joe Edgerton, who may be in an Oscar nomination maybe for Train Dreams, but we'll have to wait and see. I'm putting this one in D. The story definitely seemed interesting, but I think it's maybe the performances that could prevent it to be in it. Even with Michael Shannon's small role in this movie, like, yeah, interracial love obviously has a bit of was a very divisive thing, obviously, when it came during the civil rights era, how some people think it viewed it as illegal, even though there were some legal portions in the country. But when it comes to racist states like Virginia at the time, yeah, it was not okay, of course, for them. They consider that illegal. Obviously, with this being a racial movie as a white person, this would not have been made today. This would have been made by an African filmmaker, not a white filmmaker like Jeff Nichols. So, yeah, I just don't think the acting wise just didn't work for me. Maybe the story seemed interesting, but I think it would have been better directed if it wasn't not. I'm not saying this is racist or anything, but this is coming from somebody who actually did like Green Book. But I think it should have not been directed by a white person. Honestly, I think this is one of the few movies that this should have been directed by an African filmmaker. Next up is Nocturnal Animals, Tom Ford's follow up to A Single Man, which earned a Best Supporting Actor nomination for Michael Shannon. I am giving this one an A, but it would be, I would say, somewhat of an A minus. I'll get to the minus why I put say A minus. So this unique thrill aspect of how we kind of follow this obviously divorced couple of obviously the woman played by Amy Adams reading her ex-husband's story that was brought to her ex-husband played by Jake Gyllenhaal, and it's kind of going to the story where our main character played by our husband played by Gyllenhaal, who is in the story, um, with his what would be his fictitious wife and his fictitious kid, get kind of gang busted by a couple of hillbillies, led by Aaron Taylor Johnson, who won the Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor and even got a BAFTA nomination. But the Oscars went with the Critics' Choice wing and nominated Michael Shannon. And obviously, Gyllenhaal has to hire this sheriff played by Shannon to figure out did they actually legit kill him or not, or like trying to find the person who killed his wife and his daughter specifically throughout the trip after a road rage incident because the daughter decided to flip the middle finger. And while we're going through that, we're going through his obviously our woman Amy Adams journey of the bad relationship that could be potentially happening that they might have, like she might want to have a second chance with him. But the thing is, kind of like Arrival, Amy Adams kind of gives a very unemotionalist performance. I would say I would probably prefer this performance over her in Arrival, but the rest of the movie is fantastic with Jake Gyllenhaal's performance and Michael Shannon. He would have been my pick for supporting actor. I think Shannon should have gotten this one, even though it was the film's only nomination. It definitely should have gotten for adapted screenplay for Tom Ford. Original score definitely should have gotten in, especially in the opening credits. Yes, it's a bit odd because we're seeing a lot of nude women in that opening credits, but Tom Ford was a costume designer. You got to keep remembering that. So, um, yeah, I think this is definitely a massive improvement to his first film, A Single Man. I really didn't enjoy this film, but with Adams' emotional performance, and honestly, I really did not like Aaron Taylor Johnson in this film either. I think the villainous role could have done a lot better. And finally, for 2016, is 20th Century Women, Mike Mills' follow up to Beginners, which earned an original screenplay nomination. I am putting this one in S. I really love this coming of age movie that Mike Mills has done. It's set in the 70s of this mother son duo played by Annette Bening and Lucas Jade Zudman. I think this is probably my favorite Annette Bening performance. I think she should have, of the century so far that I've seen, she should have gotten in a Best Actress nomination. This would be my pick for original screenplay, although the real answer is Zootopia, but it didn't get in the top 8. So but yeah, 20th Century Woman, fantastic coming of age movie here, and obviously also understanding the people that are also around in the house they live, not just also with uh, this other woman played by Greta Gerwig who has had some pregnancy problems, or specifically health problems in general. And then you have, of course, this old man played by Billy Crudup, who kind of also has a unique way of not just helping kind of build the material, but also where his status would be, especially like the little nice moment he would have with Benning, especially when they dance, not in a romantic way, but in a friendship way. And then obviously Jamie, which is Lucas Shade Sudman's character of, obviously Elle Fanning's character, who kind of plays somewhat of a love interest to Jamie, but not really. But when you go into the ending explanation, but obviously they kind of really have a good unique friendship, especially since Benny asked Gerwig, which is Greta Gerwig's character, and Fanny's character to help raise him as a single boy who doesn't even have a dad, of course, as he only has his mother, who's also an avid smoker. But all five of them have a unique story, one another. The mother son connection is pretty good. Yeah, this movie should have gotten a lot more recognition other than just a screenplay like for Elle Fanning or Annette Bening, or Lucas J. Zudman, or even the film itself for Best Picture. It's a very, very heartwarming 70s film, even though it does talk about a lot of sexual definitions, although there's no nudity in the film. But it's just kind of like this was the 70s, almost like post psychedelic, I would say. But it does give us a lot of unique aspects of what health issues were going on throughout the 70s, of sexual things, as well as where we were at the time. 2017, the year of the Me Too movement, as I talked about, been in the Best Picture one as well. We got 9 films here that were in the bottom of the top 8, and we begin this up with Ridley Scott's All the Money in the World. This movie is notably famous because the thing is, it earned a supporting actor nomination for Christopher Plummer, who replaced Kevin Spacey after Spacey got his sexual harassment allegations. So, and it ended up working well, not just for Ridley Scott to finish the movie, to help refilm it for Plummer's scenes, but even worked well for Plummer to get the nomination. Although it did spark some financial controversy with Mark Wahlberg demanding more money, more so than Michelle Williams. Boy, that was very odd. I'm gonna give this one a D. The script really is that good, but the performances is kind of the big thing that kind of is the one that's a bit off. I believe this was my first. No, The Martian was. This was my second Ridley Scott movie I watched. No. It was the first Blade Runner I did prior to the marathon. That's what I did. So yeah, the first Blade Runner is pretty good, by the way. But yeah, this one kind of pretty much one of the more forgetful Ridley Scott movies. Like great eyes on a script, but performance wise, it just like doesn't really remember anything. Not even Plummer's scenes really stood out to me that much. But it's just like the whole story of where the main Gettys had to deal with. Will we ever see the uncut version that had Kevin Spacey originally? I don't think so in the light of day, probably until when he dies, maybe. Next up is The Big Sick from Michael Showalter on his biopic on Kumail Nanjiani and the relationship of his wife Emily V. Gordon, which is Reed last named in this movie. It earned an original screenplay nomination for Nanjiani and his wife. I'm giving this one an S. This is a fantastic romance comedy movie here. Obviously, we kind of understand where Kumail was going because he's playing himself here. Really fantastic of great decision having somebody play themselves, of course. But he really obviously doesn't want to follow his religious footsteps anymore, as he wants to be more like a stand-up comedian and just wants to go into more of a real life territory. And obviously meeting this white woman, of course, played by Zoe Kazan, who is fantastic in her small parts, but has some serious health issues going on. And obviously the relationship that he would have with his parents, played by Holly Hunter and Ray Romano, who both should have got supporting nominations. Like, that would have been fantastic for Ray Romano to get his first Oscar nomination. If he did, I wonder what other movies he would have been big in. Hunter had not been nominated since 13. And I think this would have been a great nomination for her comeback. Yeah, this would have been my pick for original screenplay. I think this was, for me, the script of 2017. It was fantastically well written by Kumail and his wife, of retelling the story of their relationship. And Michael Showalter did a pretty good job directing to make sure how accurate it was to Kumail's life, as well as his wife's as well. Oh, hi, Mark. As we come into The Disaster Artist, directed and starred by James Franco. Obviously, of course, the biopic of the making of the one of the worst movies of all time, The Room. And I did watch it even before this film, and yeah, I did not like the film in general. Even it just like it did make me laugh. Other than seeing a lot of the videos online of everyone throwing spoons at a movie theater, that's probably the best part. Just watching people's reactions to the film, and that's just it. Yeah, spoons is probably the only thing, but yeah. I was still really looking forward to this movie. Obviously, it did earn an adapted screenplay nomination, but not a Best Actor nomination for James Franco because his allegations came out after he won the Golden Globe, and that probably did cost him his nomination. But there were some people that probably didn't even know what The Room was, don't know who Tommy Wiseau is, and don't even know what the hell Franco was doing. Yeah, I'm gonna have to give this. Yeah, I'm gonna have to give this an F, but it would be an F plus because, yeah, it's just like it just makes Tommy Wiseau very egotistical in this movie. Like, yeah, this is obviously based on Greg Sestero's novel of his experience writing the movie, who was actually played by Dave Franco, James' brother in this movie. But it just like Tommy Wiseau feels more like a villain in this movie instead of like the weird and crazy actor he was in the movie that we actually see in the final result. But like with all the people he had to deal with, and especially in the setting that takes place, and some massive consequences that unfortunately Greg would not be able to do, like actually being in a project with Bryan Cranston, which actually they brought Bryan Cranston in to do that role as stated in the original novel. That unfortunately that cost him because Tommy wanted Greg's beard to be shaved for the rest of the film, and that just did not do well. I did remember revisiting the "I did not hit her" scene, and yeah, it seemed great in the teaser trailer, and I was really looking forward to it, but it just ended up becoming a massive disappointment. I just think this movie just makes me really not like what Tommy Wiseau would be in real life. Next up is The Florida Project from Sean Baker, who, of course, would later on win 4 Oscars for Honora. This earned a supporting actor nomination from Willem Dafoe, who swept all the critics' awards, but lost all the televised industry awards to Sam Rockwell, and rightfully so. I have to give The Florida Project an E on this one. I really did not really like this film as much. Defoe's scenes were fine. I think the best one was Bria Vinatali, who plays the young sex working mother, who obviously is trying to sell everything. Yeah, I really did not like the character, but the thing is, when I was watching somebody's review of the Florida Project, it says you have to give credit to the actor for her performance of making this character very, very unlikable and kind of like in a villainous way role. And yeah, I have to give credit to the actress for what she did to make this character such a dick. But I think it could be because of Sean Baker's writing that might not be a thing. Like, granted, I would later on like Honora, of course. But yeah, this was obviously my first film from him. I didn't see like his other films like Tangerine or Red Rocket or like I did saw Takeout, but I have not seen any of his other films. I know he did wrote Left-Handed Girl, which is Taiwan's submission for the international category for this upcoming Oscar season. Um, but yeah, just like obviously the ending, like Brooklyn, I don't blame. I can't really call anything about the child actors because that's just kind of wrong to say anything. So I'm not going to go into that territory, but the setting is pretty interesting. Doing into this motel room that is near the Walt Disney parks, and obviously they would our main character would go to Walt Disney World. The ending shot, which looked like it came from an iPhone shot, I believe. But yeah, it's just the ending is a little bit chaotic when we go to the ending. I just really don't like that. Next up is I, Tonya from Craig Gillespie, the biopic on the Tonya Harding scandal, starring Margot Robbie, which got her a Best Actress nomination, Allison Janney, who got a win for Supporting Actress. Also, Sebastian Stan is in this cast, Paul Walter Hauser, in one of his early roles, and it also earned a Film Editing nomination. And I'm putting this one in. I'm going to put this one in A. Craig Gillespie really did a good job directing this movie and really getting to know what on earth the scandal was on sabotaging Nancy Kerrigan, probably because of jealousy, because she thinks she's the greatest skater in America. But obviously, she had massive difficulties. Obviously, would be with her future ex husband, who would be played by Sebastian Stan, who should have gotten a Best Supporting Actor nomination, and also her abusive mother, played by Allison Janney. And Janney obviously knows how to play like overprotective parents. If you've seen the Adam Shakeman's adaptation of Hairspray, but obviously this one's a little bit more abusive, and obviously the real Lavonna Harding obviously claims that everything was almost false, I believe, in a future interview, but this is coming like almost kind of like in a documentary mock style of just recreating like with interviews that like all the characters would have. I really kind of like that idea of having like a fictitious documentary of this and see what actually would be going on, of course. Yeah, it should have also gotten an original screenplay nomination. I love that editing nomination. That was pretty inspired. It definitely should have gotten for Best Picture. I think this movie was really fantastic and a unique way of telling a sports scandal in the way of a film. Now we're into Logan, which earned a surprising nomination for adapted screenplay for Scott Frank, Michael Green, and the first Oscar nomination for James Mangold. Despite of it came out very early in the year, I think it was in March, I believe, it managed to get this nomination because adapted screenplay was pretty weak in 2017, and it got that Writers Guild nomination and got that Oscar nomination. Now the thing is, I did not watch any of the other X-Men films prior to Logan, and there's supposed to be somewhat of a trilogy of this that is supposed to be in, I think, with X-Men Origins Wolverine and the Wolverine, but I think that they all kind of work as standalone sequels, if I'm assuming, and that's what Logan kind of is. Yeah, I'm gonna have to put this one. It, I'm gonna have to put this in E, but E minus because I'm not putting it in F because F just didn't make sense for me. Yeah, probably because since I never watched any of the other X-Men films prior to it, because I think like I kind of stated like with what was it, Creed, Logan kind of feels like a standalone sequel, um, that you didn't really need to understand, and obviously kind of really goes poking fun of him actually being in the Marvel comics and this whole political situation. Once again, it's the police versus the superhero. That's kind of a pet peeve I have when it comes to superhero movies, but yeah, I just don't really think there was a standout, maybe except for Daphne King's performance, and that was it. Next up is Aaron Sorkin's debut feature, Molly's Game, which earned an adapted screenplay nomination. I am putting this one in A as well, like an A minus, I would say. A fantastic debut, what Sorkin did. He Molly's Game. This movie definitely would have been my pick for adapted screenplay in that weak lineup. It was the only one I actually did like. I would take all the other four out. We'll talk about our next other film in the adapted lineup next. But yeah, telling the story of telling the story of Molly Bloom, of how she does this whole gambling thing, and obviously with the illegal things of how she runs it, and obviously with the not so good relationship with her father, played by Kevin Costner, of course, in that one scene. They would have, not just in the backstory, but when they reunite in an ice skating ring, I believe, later in the film. But kind of really going the explanation of definitions of like what gambling is a bit and how illegal what illegal moves Molly Bloom was doing, because this is based on her memoir that Sorkin adapted from. So a lot of people probably forget about this film as his debut feature, and I think this really would have gotten a lot of better. Like Jessica Chastain definitely should have gotten a Best Actress nomination. Film editing definitely would have been great, and I would have definitely put in the Best Picture lineup. And I think this was had the more directing standout than the Trial of the Chicago 7, although his Chicago 7 would be my favorite film he has done as a director in terms of movies. But yeah, this was definitely a great debut feature from him. Now we're coming into what I would say one of the most confusing movies I have ever seen, Mudbound from Dee Reese, the first Netflix film to be nominated in the top 8 categories. Yeah, I'm gonna have to put this one in F. It's just absolutely confusing to me because it kind of starts out this new white family moving into this area where it's kind of like a lot of racist places are, and you have like some people like a hired maid played by Mary J. Blige who earned an I don't know supporting actress nomination. I don't remember what she does. And then it kind of goes into like the Civil War thing, and obviously Jason Mitchell comes back home from the military after serving his time in the war, but is still being discriminated and racist after he entered into a store in the wrong direction in a segregation way, even though he lived in the army. But then obviously a lot of the white residents who are members of the KKK did not like it, and so they killed him. And that it's just like it kind of goes like it just kind of is a bit confusing. I might have spoiled that entire movie, but it's kind of confusing at where it kind of goes. It doesn't really has a specific main character we follow. And I forget about the rest of the journey from our white family, which I know Carrie Mulligan's the mother of the family that moves in, but that's about it. The only great thing about this movie is the end credit song "Mighty River," and that is a fantastic song, by the way. Especially from those backup singers. Yeah, that is the only thing that definitely deserved that Oscar nomination. Nothing else for this movie. It's just absolutely confusing to me. I don't understand its screenplay or supporting actress nomination or cinematography. I'm glad it did not get in the picture lineup because it definitely would have been one of the worst nominations for me. And finally, we are into Roman J. Israel Esquire, Dan Gilroy's follow up to Nightcrawler, which earned Denzel Washington another Oscar nomination for Best Actor after he lost the previous year to Fences. I am giving this one a B here. Now, one thing to note about this film specifically that kind of almost has a bit of connection to me, of course, because obviously, although it's not stated in the movie, our main character that Denzel plays, Roman actually has Asperger's. And the way how he specifically does in this movie, like, it's not really noticeable, but you can definitely tell. Um, it's not really a perfect portrayal. It's okay. There's not really a lot of offensive things that are going on. I will say that it's not an offensive performance. He does a pretty good job with this performance. It's just it doesn't feel like one. I would say it just like you can tell based on the character's emotions. So that's one thing that obviously definitely works well with Denzel's performance. But obviously, with the story kind of goes where he kind of exposed this criminal that he kind of knows of, and then he gets all the money and then spends it all on himself, and then there are some massive consequences. But obviously, he has some massive connection with a friendship played by Colin Farrell and a little romance played by Carmen Ejogo, which is pretty good. I think she would have gotten good Best Supporting Actress nomination. So kind of like The Judge, critics were very mixed on it, but I do find it a bit underrated. Now we're into 2018, and we got 7 films here that were in the top 8 outside of Best Picture. And we begin this up with the Coen Brothers' The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, which earned an out of nowhere adapted screenplay nomination. We all thought it was original, but there were actually 2 segments that they adapted: The Gal Who Got It Away and On Gold. Not, I think it's not On Golden Pond. I don't some sort of golden thing. I don't want to be confused with the Mark Rydell movie from the 80s. I'm putting this one in C. Now, there are actually some good things about segments from the movie. Obviously, the main segment, our title segment starring Tim Blake Nelson, that was a fantastic segment. I mean, because I believe this was originally supposed to be a miniseries, but then Netflix decided, no, let's do an anthology movie. So that's what ended up becoming. So yeah, the first segment of our title segment starring Tim Blake Nelson, that was fantastic. It's because it starts up to be funny, but then obviously when the rest of the segments goes, it gets a little bit more dramatic and it goes very dark in the final one. But yeah, the first segment starring Tim Blake Nelson, that was fantastic. And then we kind of go into the second act, played by James Franco, of this potential robbery thing, and that was a bit short, but that was fine. It wasn't fantastic or anything like that. That was near Alligadones, I believe that's what it is. And then Neil Ticket, you just follow this kind of this talking act of a guy with no hands and legs, and you just have this young cowboy that's just trying to obviously serve himself, and then what he does at the end just like gets rid of him is just, I don't know. I think that was Liam Neeson, right? And then All Golden Canyon, that's the one segment of this guy obviously trying to find gold. A pretty nice segment of somebody trying to find gold, and then obviously the way how it turns, kind of shocking at how it ended up becoming. And then the second best segment, you've got The Gal Who Got Rattled, that's what it is, following this um, young woman who is obviously traveling with her older brother to another area, but her brother unfortunately died during the travel, and now she has a massive situation when she either gets there, either to go back or not, and obviously have this little really kind of connection with this other one of the heads of the entire rattle of potentially maybe a future relationship or stuff like that, but it's kind of a little bit difficult. And then you have the final segment, the mortal remains, where you just have these 3 characters on this um, carriage, and then it kind of goes into darker territory where the guy just kind of who is like the head per- person that's telling these writers of where they're going. It's just like, yeah, it's all basically connection of deaths in one way, shape, or forms. But I think 3 of them really do well with obviously the golden one, the gal who got it, and especially the first segment. Yeah, the first segment is easily the best one. Obviously, I talked about like Tim Blake Nelson should have got a Best Supporting Actor nomination. I love that Oscar-inspired nomination for original song for When a Cowboy Trades His Spurs for Wings. That's a fantastic nomination. It would be my second pick because I do think Shallow was the right winner, of course. But yeah, When a Cowboy Trades His Spurs for Wings, I really wish they would have done the film version of the Oscar stage instead of the songwriters, because Tim Blake Nelson and Willie Watson would have been a great highlight of that ceremony. But that's unfortunately. Zoe Kazan definitely should have got a Best Supporting Actress nomination for her segment. So yeah, this was kind of the closest things the Coen brothers have been trying to get another movie into their Best Picture lineup. They almost did it. They would have got a lot more supporting and other technical categories and even an acting nomination. But Netflix, of course, was all going in on Alfonso Cuarón's Roma, so I think this was probably their second best bet. Now we're into Can You Ever Forgive Me from Marielle Heller, her follow up to The Diary of a Teenage Girl, written by Nicole Holofcener and co written by Jeff Whitty. And it earned 3 nominations in the top 8 for actress for Melissa McCarthy in a dramatic performance as she plays the famous writer Lee Israel, who actually kind of uses her typewriter to use fake deleted writings from famous people to get money from, and a supporting actor nomination for Hugh Grant, who plays this um, close friend of Israel, a fictitious person who I think really is a massive. I don't remember it much because I have not seen the movie, but he's fantastic in it. And adapted screenplay, which actually almost did won because it did won the Writers Guild the week before the Oscars, beating out Black Klansman and our Oscar winner and another film that we'll get into here in about a few minutes. Um, yeah, I am putting this one in A. I really wait, not that's wrong film. We'll get to that film next. Yeah, there it is. Putting this one in A. Really a fantastic movie. Melissa McCarthy really gives a fantastic performance. Like, this is the one thing I like when comedic actors do dramatic roles. Most of the time when they do that, they do a phenomenal job, and they really should get a lot more credit for doing something like that. And easily, I think this is a nomination I do think has aged well. Richard E. Grant should have won Best Supporting Actor if Mahershala Ali was not category fraud in supporting. I mean, I'm glad he did one of the Film Independent Spirit Awards. But yeah, he gave a fantastic performance in that. I really wish he would have got a lot more wins. Even at BAFTA, they screwed him over. They just gave Ali, like, I get it with the Globes and the BAFTAs because they didn't give Ali the win for Moonlight, but did they? But did he really have to sweep that entire season? Even though I did predict that throughout that season he was going to sweep, but I'm glad Richard E. Grant did got at least a win that season. The script is phenomenal. I think this would have been my pick for adapted screenplay, so I would agree with the Writers Guild. I think this would have been my choice. Oh boy, now we're into Cold War, which is from Paul Pawlikowski, which earned an international feature nomination, a cinematography nomination, and after getting a BAFTA nomination, Pawlikowski gets a standalone directing best director nomination, even though the film did not make it into the picture lineup. Okay, I had talked about this in my review of the film a few years ago, so um, I'm just gonna put this at F, and this is mainly because the thing about it is it's very repetitive on our two couples falling, like, they want to be together, they don't, they want to be together, they don't, during this communism time period. It's just like the rock around the clock number is the only thing I do remember about this movie. The 4:3 ratio did not work for me in this film. It's just like they just like they these main characters just would not shut up. They just don't even know. It's just very repetitive. That's probably the biggest problem why I have with this movie. Pawlikowski did not need that directing nomination. I'm glad it didn't get original screenplay though, because if it did got in for best picture, it would have been probably one of my worst nominees in the century so far. But yeah, this movie I really did not like. I do like Ida. I'll talk more about that film in the international tier list whenever that will be. But yeah, this was my first Pawlikowski film. I really was looking forward to it, but I really got disappointed how repetitive the movie is. Here's, I would say, a hidden gem of the 2010s for me, and that is At Eternity's Gate, Julian Schnabel's biopic on Vincent van Gogh, which earned Willem Dafoe a Best Actor nomination. And Dafoe himself has stated that he stated that this was his favorite nomination he received because it's for a lead performance, because everyone knows he's in a lot of famous supporting roles, but this is one of the few movies other than Antichrist from Lars von Trier that he took a lead role in. I am putting this one in um B, but it would be a B plus. Well, first up, it's been a while since I've seen this movie, but Defoe really took this performance fantastically, and the story of what Vincent Van Gogh was during his time. This was a better told movie than Loving Vincent, honestly. Like, if you were not a fan of Loving Vincent, I highly recommend you check this film out, specifically for Defoe's performance. And Schnabel really did a great job directing this movie. It's basically the reason why it really stood out to me more so than Loving Vincent. So, yeah, I recommend this film more so than the oil painted animated feature from the previous year. Next up is First Reform from Paul Schrader, which earned him an original screenplay nomination. The man who wrote Taxi Driver. I'm giving this one a D. It definitely seemed really good at the first beginning glance of the pastor getting, who is played by Ethan Hawke, getting ready to celebrate the church's anniversary. But after when one of his parishioners' husbands passed away, the main parishioner played by Amanda Seyfried that we follow with her husband passing away, but there's a secret environment that he's been dealing with, and that would lead into the influence of Hawke's character as this pastor, specifically of some of the more darker realms of like environmentalism, I believe. It's just absolutely confusing when you bring that up, and the ending, you just don't know what actually happens. Of course, like it's pretty interesting, but it really is massively difficult to explain because obviously this is coming from somebody who never watched Taxi Driver or seen any of his other films like Affliction, which earned a Best Supporting Actor win from James Coburn. But yeah, I just don't think this nomination has not aged well. Not aged well, but I just don't think it's kind of, I would say, a very disappointment level because I was also really looking forward to this movie. Now is If Beale Street Could Talk, Barry Jenkins' follow up to Moonlight, adapting a James Baldwin novel, which earned an adapted screenplay nomination and a win for supporting actress for Regina King. I am putting this one in E. I do prefer Moonlight over this film. I mean, it's just basically, obviously, yeah, it's kind of like almost three plots going on at the same time with Kiki Lane's plot of her pregnancy. You have Stephen James' plot about his time in jail, and then you have his mother's plot, obviously doing a massive investigation about something about her daughter, how she got raped or something. I don't remember. Like obviously this is coming from James Baldwin's novel, but yeah, I don't think that Regina King win would have been my pick. My pick probably would have been for Amy Adams and Vice. Yeah, Moonlight made a lot more understandable with Jenkins when he wrote that, more so than him adapting James Baldwin's dialogue. It, yeah, it just didn't work for me. Not even the score. I think the only thing I remember were just obviously a scene where King is out of the country speaking to somebody, the birth of Kiki Lane's child in this movie, and one of Stephen James' prison calls, and that's it. And then finally for 2018, we got The Wife, which earned Glenn Close a Best Actress nomination. Almost got her the win, but they ended up giving it to Olivia Colman for her supporting performance in The Favorite. If they did it the right way, if Colman went supporting and Emily Stone went leading, Close would have had an Oscar by now. A lot of people do find this Oscar baitness just a movie just trying to campaign it, but if you've seen the movie, it's actually really great, honestly. I'm putting this one in A. This is a fantastic film, specifically exposing a bit of a secret, uh, obviously, of the wife of who she actually really was with her relationship with her husband, played by Jonathan Pryce. Her husband is, I think, getting a Nobel Peace Prize, but this young guy, played by Christian Slater, is trying to figure out, is the wife the actual writer and not her husband? Because we do go into a lot of back scenes with them as young college students of their relationship and how potentially might Price's character obviously might have stole the writing from his wife, and she's the actual writer, but it's kind of more in a sexual way, kind of like a Me Too sort of thing, even though it's not really shown much in the movie. But it obviously really goes into massive secrets and maybe potential downfall of the relationship. But that is fantastic writing from Jane Anderson, who adapted this European novel. And the performances were real great, not just from Glenn Close, but Christian Slater really should have got a Best Supporting Actor nomination. He was fantastic in this role, as well as the script. It should have gotten in it for adapted screenplay. Like, Sony Pictures Classics should have really campaigned this movie a lot more because this is one of the few Oscar bait films that is done right. It's just like, it's really that good, honestly. Jonathan Pryce was fine in the movie. I wish there was a lot more scenes. But the young actors who played the two the young actors who play our two main characters in the college days were fantastic as well, especially the young female actress who plays Glenn Close's character in the youth years. That was also pretty fantastic. So yeah, this one was very fantastic. A fantastic movie. I think you guys should just watch, not because of Glenn Close's performance, but from the script in general and from some of the other performances. And now we wrap up the 2010s with 2019, beginning with A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Marielle Heller's follow up to Can You Ever Forgive Me, which is loosely based on the Esquire magazine Can You Say Hero, which follows our journalist, fictitiously named Lloyd, Fogel, Lloyd Fogel, played by Matthew Rhys, of his Esquire magazine interview with Fred Rogers that occurred, I believe, in the late 90s, or was it? It was definitely somewhere in the 90s, because it was definitely not early 2000s. Um, I think it was Tom Juno who was the actual real life writer, Esquire magazine writer. And this obviously specifically focuses on Lloyd's relationship specifically with his father, and obviously some sort of tragic event in the past from his mother that he cannot let go of. And obviously, he doesn't want that with the relationship with his wife, especially when they just had their first child right lately. But when he gets to meet Fred Rogers, and then he just feels like something is like missing, and he just doesn't even know how to write the article or not. And then, obviously, with the relationship he would have with his father, played by Chris Cooper, it kind of goes into a little bit more understandable way. And the way how they decided to make this movie, let me just put this in. I'm gonna put this one in B, but it would be B plus. They decided to adapt the story of the movie in like an episode of the show. If you've seen the movie, you know how I'm talking about. How they actually begin this up with an opening scene of Mr. Rogers' "Won't You Be My Neighbor" scene, played by Tom Hanks. Hanks would is pretty good, but I wouldn't say he would have been my first choice for Mr. Rogers. I don't know. I think I might even prefer his portrayal as Walt Disney even more so, but I think they're kind of both evenly matched, I would say, because um, I don't know. It's just kind of very odd. But yeah, it obviously starts with Hanks kind of doing his rendition of "Won't You Be My Neighbor," and then kind of introducing each kind of like in a little picture thing, and then you get to see a lot of things how it kind of goes into like the picture from VHS of showing how Esquire magazine articles are made, and then it kind of goes into like other elements of the shows and some accurate moments, of course, that occurred as well. Um, but obviously, the big thing is obviously focusing on Lloyd trying to figure out who, not really about himself and his relationship, but what does Mr. Rogers means to him now as an adult. So yeah, this is definitely a good movie. If you watch this with like "Won't You Be My Neighbor" first and then this would be a good back to back scenario. And like this is obviously a movie. It kind of explains why we need Mr. Rogers now in like because where we are right now in America and how everyone's hating each other and pointing fingers at one another, especially in Congress and the Senate. Mr. Rogers really is somebody that we really need in today's standards, and I think this movie kind of really probably will stand the test of time. Hanks did earn a Best Supporting Actor nomination, his first one in general. I do like it, but it just did not make it in my personal lineups in that year specifically. Next up is Bombshell, which is obviously the biopic on the Fox News sexual allegations on Roger Allers from obviously the perspectives of Megyn Kelly, specifically, played by Charlize Theron, Gretchen Wilson, I believe, played by Nicole Kidman, and a compost character played by Margot Robbie, with Allers led by John Lithgow, played by John Lithgow, excuse me. Yeah, critics were mixed with it. I will also agree. I'm going to give this one an E. It really did have the potential of telling this way, but I think maybe probably having a compost character could be the biggest problem of having Robbie playing this fictitious character in the format. If it really went a lot more in on Megyn Kelly specifically, and even Gretchen, you can say. John Lithgow is fantastic as Roger Allers, and the makeup department did a really good job on how they did in the hairstyling department on all the characters. But Lithgow really should have got a Best Supporting Actor nomination, I would say. He was fantastic as the villain as Allers. And even, like, this was, like, I think a year or two before he passed. Not the movie, but the real life story, of course, of his allegations. But I just think, like, some of the casting decisions might be up. I don't remember much of Kidman's performance, and Kate McKinnon, no. Even though this is, like, a dramatic movie, but I don't think Kate McKinnon would not have been a good choice in this movie. Next up is Harriet, the Harriet Tubman biopic starring Cynthia Erivo, which got her a Best Actress nomination, the only colored person to do so, when it had that hashtag Oscar So White controversy again, and an Original Song nomination for Stand Up. I have to put this one in E as well. It's kind of very formulaic in this biopic format. Erivo is decent in her performance, but I don't remember much of this movie. And like I think Leslie Odom Jr. was also in this movie, I believe, and I don't remember what he did. The best thing I remember the most about this movie is the credits on Stand Up, which is fantastic. I can't really say it would be my pick because I've not seen Breakthrough or Rocket Man. I did see obviously Toy Story 4 and Frozen 2, but yeah, but regardless of the movie, Stand Up is a pretty great song in and without context as well. Definitely would be in my original song personal lineup, but it's just a very forgetful biopic. But here's a biopic that a lot of people would have very questionable about because of the win it got. But I ended up really liking this of not knowing much of the real life person, and that is Judy, which earned a Best Actress win for Renee Zellweger, a second Oscar she had gotten, and more of a career win. I am putting this one in. I'm gonna put this in A, but it is an A minus. Yeah, as somebody who did not know much about Judy Garland's life, and hot take, I have not seen The Wizard of Oz yet. I might have to after when I watch Wicked for Good. Yeah, it really kind of goes into a bit of the life of Judy Garland during her final years in England, where she's performing in the stage show, and then her final relationship with her fourth and final husband, as well as obviously the drugs that she unfortunately had to take. Obviously, spending a lot of time away from her kids, and just settling on her final years and how the British public is really liking her more so than the Americans as she used to be, especially when she was a child actress. When we see some of the back scenes, like in The Wizard of Oz, or her supposed relationship with Mickey Rooney at the time. But yeah, it really is very underrated. The script is fantastic of adapting that stage play into the film. The only thing that prevents it from being like an A plus or an S, the acting is very, very weak. I think the acting prevents it from being an S tier for me, or even a masterpiece. I mean, it's great on a technical level. It's great directed. It's great written. Well written, excuse me. The cinematography is fantastic. Costume design, production design, the editing, the format it does. But the acting is just so weak. Even Zellweger just doesn't stand out to me. Not even Jesse Buckley, who's the only other recognizable actor in the entire cast. It's just, yeah, Zellweger just won that just because she played Judy Garland, an actress who never won an Oscar in her lifetime. And I think that's the reason why she won that. Although a lot of people think it would be a better win than Cold Mountain because she won that for a Weinstein film. But yeah, I honestly think Cold Mountain's her superior performance. But yeah, I really do like this movie. It's just the acting kind of prevents me from going back to watching it, even though it's great on everything else. Now, time for a fan favorite, and that is Rian Johnson's Knives Out, which earned an original screenplay nomination, but I found it overrated, so I have to put this in D. The thing about it is, with the exception of Benoit Blanc, all the other characters, it's just like either not very that memorable and how the murder ended up becoming, of the revealment ended up becoming, but it's just that I don't agree with all the characters do not deserve that the house. Not just obviously all the family members of our main person got murdered, who is Christopher Plummer, but even our actual main character, Marta Cabrera, played by Ana de Armas, because obviously, technically, her mother is an illegal immigrant. And because of that, that would cause some massive controversy, of course. And I'm surprised it was not even called out when the movie came out. But it's just like it now would bring. If that was today, that would have brought up a massive debate on that. Whether or not Marta is an actual legal immigrant or not, because her mother would isn't. But obviously they didn't went into it, of course, because it was more about the investigation, of course. If they did not add that plot, I would not mind Marta having the house. But since that element was brought up, which is something I have the massive divisiveness about, because it kind of follows an immigration format we've seen in many other these other films like Babel, A Better Life, and Maria Full of Grace, as I mentioned. It also kind of adds into that territory, unfortunately. The production design's fantastic, but yeah, I did find this movie to be overrated. Sorry. Next up is Pedro Almodovar's Pain and Glory, which was obviously guaranteed the runner-up in the international category behind Parasite, but did earn Antonio Banderas' first Oscar nomination for Best Actor. I have to put this in E. This is obviously another one of those movies I'm very hit or miss with Pedro, a miss for Pedro Almodovar for me. I mean, other than like the opening scene of Banderas in the pool and like what he's doing as a supposed, I think, a filmmaker or something like that, it's just kind of very forgetful, honestly. other than like maybe the production design or just like some scenes I kind of barely remember because it's been a while since I've seen this movie. It just very felt mid tier, miss like just didn't work for me honestly. Unlike some of Almodovar's other films, I even Talk to Her. I think I like it better more so than Pain and Glory, even though it's on the same tier list. Next up is Clint Eastwood's Richard Jewell, which would most likely be which is guaranteed his final Oscar-nominated movie, which earned Kathy Bates her first nomination since About Schmidt, and also most likely her last nomination since I believe she did announce her retirement. I'm putting this one in C. It is a pretty interesting story of going into the man who obviously was potentially either did he or did he not, obviously the massive discussion him being a potential criminal, obviously of the obviously 1996 Atlanta city bomb that occurs during the Olympics, where he managed to save a lot of people, but unfortunately, obviously there were some people that I think two or three people did die. I forget what, how many casualties, but there were a lot of casualties that were saved. Of course, from Richard Jewell, played phenomenally by Paul Walter Hauser, a great casting choice right there. But obviously, when this journalist played by Olivia Munn, which obviously did spark a lot of controversy when the movie came out, of how villainous portrayed it is, or how inaccurate it was, according from the actual journalist. But honestly, I actually really did like Olivia Munn's performance in this more so than Kathy Bates' performance. And obviously, it goes into the trial whether if he actually knew about the bomb, or which obviously he didn't, and lead to, of course, his innocence. Yeah, like it would have worked a lot better, I think, if it had better other actors other than Kathy Bates or Sam Rockwell, or even the writing from Billy Ray, who wrote Captain Phillips. I think he would have done a lot better job in the script, honestly. But Paul Walter Hauser does a pretty good job in his performance. I've not seen like The Luckiest Man in America, the Pressure Luck biopic recently. I've heard some okay thoughts about the movie, which make me preventive of watching it, but I will probably have to watch it sometime soon since I was an advocate on Pressure Luck, and seeing how Paul Walter Hauser did a good job in this performance in general. And finally, for 2019 and the 2010s, we've got The Two Popes, Fernando Marlella's biopic on Anthony McCartan's play The Pope, which looks into Jorge Mario Bergoglio, the man who would become Pope Francis. Um, and this was, I think, the movie that had me a bit of an advocate thing for the College of Cardinals and Conclaves, which led me into that conclave video I did on who were the members of the College of Cardinals that were going to elect the new Pope, which of course ended up becoming Pope Leo the 14th. I'm going to put this one in D. I do like the conclave scenes, but obviously this was obviously more about the life of Pope Francis, and we see a lot of backstories of him, not just as a young kid, but also as a young Jewish priest when he was in Argentina at the time during military dictatorship, and I think communism, I believe, dictatorship, I believe that it was. Yeah, a lot of those scenes, which are a lot of them are non-English scenes, of course, it just doesn't really stand out. I think it's also because since it is Anthony McCartan who did wrote this movie, which earned him an adapted screenplay nomination, as well as Jonathan Pryce getting his first Oscar nomination for Best Actor, and Anthony Hopkins' a supporting actor nomination, his first nomination since Amistad. Hopkins is actually fantastic as his portrayal as Benedict XVI, although I think it's a little bit of a miscast because Benedict XVI is a little bit more smaller than that, but Hopkins does a great portrayal of the Pope at the time. And although Price does look like the Pope, I think they would have gotten I would have an actual German actor and an actual Argentinian actor playing the two popes. But there are some good scenes they would have when we are in the present scenes with Cardinal Bergoglio and Pope Benedict during their meeting in the Vatican, and obviously in their discussion at the Sistine Chapel, of course, and obviously the credit scene when Pope Cardinal Bergoglio becomes Pope Francis. Even though this was not true, of course, because it never happened because Pope Francis did not watch television. Um, Having a little fun fictional scene of the popes watching the World Cup final of 2015 between Germany and Argentina. That was kind of a fun credit scene, but even though that was not true in real life, but that was kind of a bit of a fun moment, just showing how Pope Francis was a massive soccer fan in general. But yeah, a lot of the conclave scenes were really well done. I really wish that was more about the movie of the election of the two popes instead of the life of Pope Francis, even though I do understand where he came from and what would become the one of the most important people in the 2010s through early 2020s, and obviously he was one of the iconic figures that we did lost this past year, of course. But I'm glad he managed to get through all the way to Easter Sunday, of course. Um, but we'll see how if there would be another movie that could really go into the actual conclaves themselves. Even though we did have a conclave movie, but a biopic about conclaves would be a lot of interesting to see, other than just like these small scenes we saw when in this movie in general.